Kat Edmonson is joining us. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Sean.
So tell us, how'd you get into music originally?
Well, I have always been naturally musical. It wasn't like a decision that anyone helped me with or guided me to. My family loves music, and I watched a lot of old movies as a kid that
Hmm.
had great music in it,
Yeah.
and then a lot of kids. Like I watched the Muppets and a lot of Disney stuff, and that all has great music in it. And I
Sure.
just gravitated to all of these great songs. And I had this funny understanding as a child that from watching all of these musical type movies, that when anything eventful would happen, uh, that would lead to a song. And I really thought that even though I didn't see that in my personal life, that was like what I had to look forward to as an adult. So
Okay.
I was absolutely prepared, you know, and I
Uh-huh.
would start to naturally compose, with different experiences that I was having. So if I was excited, I would sing about it. If I was sad, I would start to sing about it, um, because I understood the world to be that way.
Uh-huh. That's awesome. It would be so funny if you were just in, the grocery store or something and someone broke out into song over something that good that happened in their life.
If they did, I would join it. I'm telling you, I'm
Yeah.
prepared.
You'd be the backup person in the back.
Yeah, yeah, I would do the backup dance.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, and some of the your inspirations definitely come across in your music. So that makes total sense. So you were singing, it sounds like all through your childhood and even preparing for possible events with. So you were writing songs for potential events that you would see occurring in your life.
Yeah, just not even potential ones. Like in the moment, I'd be making up music, and and that allowed me to, as a songwriter, even though I wasn't intentionally trying to be a songwriter, it allowed me to answer each moment honestly. So when I would come to making a song, and even now when I deliberately sit down to write a song, um, it's the same sort of approach. What am I feeling in this moment right now? And and that's the path to getting where I want to go. It's actually it's been a wonderful safeguard against uh, just falling into the trap of what should I write about, or, too many options.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm only just answering the moment that is right now, then I don't have other options, and
Yeah.
it's been a wonderful way to know where I stand.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. I've been told Buddhists like to keep focused like that, and they say that's one way of getting too overwhelmed with the world is just do what you're supposed to be. Just do what you're doing right now. If you're brushing your teeth, think about brushing your teeth. If you're driving your car, think about driving your car. Don't think about all the other stuff in the world. So that's Kat Edmondson's philosophy for writing music as well.
Well, if only I could apply it to the rest of my life. I
Uh-huh.
think I would be much happier.
So you're doing this while you're a kid. You're singing songs, wherever you are, based on the moment, based on this situation. How do you go from doing it just naturally to something a little bit more structured?
Well, I waited quite a long time. I mean, I knew I had a talent very early on, and I was satisfied to sing to myself and to sing for my mom's friends who would come over, or my friends' parents. Um, that was enough for me for a time. And I did, try out for like school plays and stuff, which I excelled in.
Hmm.
And I was a member of the children's choir at church, and then the high school choir. But I was always kind of the deviant one, like hanging out in the back and not really paying attention,
Mm.
uh, because I really craved the spotlight, and if I wasn't getting attention, I just kind of would goof off,
Mhm.
for better or for worse. So it wasn't until I left home and it started to occur to me that this would be the time to begin to plan. Um, if I wanted to be in music, if I wanted to pursue music, it would be time to like prepare for that. It's not something that we discussed at home. My mom uh, just readily assumed that I would go to college and major in something practical, and we never really talked about it actually.
Mm.
Um, and so I got to college. I was at school at the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and I chose a music 101 course because there were certain things that you could pick up within your studies, and I realized as we were studying music how much I liked it. So I
Mhm.
had a meeting with the professor there, and I was like, I've never considered this before. Is this something I could study?
Mhm.
And he said, yeah, absolutely. At the time we were studying certain classical music, and I thought, wow, I really, really dig this. But the more I considered it, the more simultaneously I would gone down a few times to this blues bar
Mhm.
um, to hear this woman sing. It was a club called Mama's Blues, and I would go with some older people and kind of pass for being older myself, which I don't know how because I looked like I was 12 when I was 18.
Mhm.
But um, Mama owned the blues club and she sang and she was great. And at some point, she let me get up and sing. And there I saw the very quick way to get exactly where I wanted to go.
Mm. Mhm.
Just ask if you can get up and sing.
Mhm.
So I realized that I lacked a certain amount of discipline to study music and that I just really wanted to be performing.
Mhm.
But that certainly wasn't um, immediate. Um, I eventually left the college. I only stayed in school there for a year because I was working full time and putting myself through school full time, and so I was like just strapped. Um, so I moved back to Texas, where I'm from, and I tried out for American Idol
Mm.
at someone's recommendation. I got really far in that. I ended up going to Hollywood and getting to like 40 something there.
Nice.
Thanks.
What season was that? Where
I
could
was
we
season
could we
2.
go back and check it out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know that you can go online on YouTube and you'll find one of my auditions. I
Okay.
auditioned several times, twice in front of Paula and Simon and Randy, who were the judges at the time.
Mhm.
So it was season 2. Ruben Studdard won that year.
Mm.
I
Okay.
remember riding the bus with Ruben on the way to one of the auditions. He was a very nice guy.
Mhm.
And I didn't make that, all the way. So I went home and was still having really no guidance about this. And I didn't know anyone else that was pursuing the arts at the time. I just started working again and having a social life and figuring out how to pay my rent and um I got kind of sidetracked. I would sing again for my friends at parties and, just ask people. I would walk up to people and ask them if they wanted to hear me sing, which I usually got a nice reception for.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was actually when I was working one night at a bar. I was cocktail waitressing, and someone came in and said um, that they were a jazz musician. And I said, well, I'm a jazz singer, you know, with full confidence.
Mhm.
And it's like took them aback, and and he was like, really, where do you sing? And I was like, you know these days it's mostly in the shower, but
Uh-huh.
Um, but I'm a jazz singer. And he said, well, you should come down to the Jazz Jam, which was in downtown Austin at a club called the Elephant Room.
Mm-hmm.
Every Sunday night they hosted it. And I said, I will. And so I did. I got there and I waited all night. It was a 4-hour jam session. I got there at the beginning. I waited until the very end when they finally said, yeah, you can come up. They really didn't want to hear from me.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what song do you want to sing? And I said, Stormy Weather. And they said, what key is it in? And I said, I don't know, which is unfortunately what they anticipated, I might say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sang a little bit for the pianist, and he gave me a short intro, and I just dove in. And upon singing the song, the leader of the session said, why don't you come back next week?
Nice.
And so I started coming back every week. I started collecting phone numbers from people, and just, being friendly with folks, and calling them up during the week and asking them how they were doing to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And I remember I got that advice from my uncle, who was always very supportive of me. He would always say, Catherine, it's all about networking and staying in touch with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and long story short, within 6 months, I quit my day job, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just singing full time.
Wow. So were you were actually making some money performing there then? Enough money at that regular gig, or were you getting multiple gigs at that point?
The Jazz Jam was free, and you could only sing one song a night.
Mm-hmm.
But I got one gig, and that was enough impetus for me to quit my job. I wasn't scared. I didn't know, how I was going to pay for anything, but I wasn't afraid.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm somewhat notorious, people that know me well, for encouraging other people to quit their jobs and pursue their dreams.
Uh-huh.
Because I have an extraordinary, really absurd amount of confidence in such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that if you have that sort of inspiration, it's actually a knowing. I take it to mean it's a knowing. These are directions that you should just supposed to follow, and that's how I've taken them anyway, and that's served me quite well. But for anyone else that doesn't have that kind of confidence, I don't know if to each his own. I don't know if
Sure.
everyone can quit their job.
Right.
But I do love to encourage people to listen and trust implicitly that calling that just feels like, at first it just feels like a fantasy, and then maybe an indulgence in that fantasy. And I don't think that's what it is. I think it's actually tuning in to your purpose.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Like you said, it's an intuition rather than a fantasy.
I think so.
Yeah, that's really cool. So notoriously notorious for telling people to quit their jobs and pursue their dreams. You did it yourself, and after just getting one paid gig, and obviously it's done you some good. So what were some of the do you remember some of the kind of maybe some of the turning points after that? You had a paying gig, so great, that was a turning point because you're like, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to keep doing this. Were there some special gigs or special moments after that kind of helped begin your maybe snowball to success, I would say?
No, I mean, I wish I could say that, but uh, I I think, yeah, I just I started playing like 7 nights a week, and
Mm.
sometimes more than one gig a day.
Hmm.
Uh, and I just worked really, really hard. Um, I watched to see how other people were very successful, and I ultimately confronted the fact that there were these things in place like record labels, and there's all this infrastructure within the music business that helps an artist to get where they are. And so I started asking questions like, well, how do I get into those arenas so that I can, progress more quickly? I don't want to just continue singing in bars and restaurants.
Hmm.
I want to sing in clubs, and then I want to sing in theaters, and then I saw where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I also didn't I wasn't inhibited with my dreams. I went all the way. I when I dream about something, I fully dream the biggest dream that you can. And then this is appropriate for this podcast, and then I think backwards,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so um I I knew that I didn't know anyone at record labels, but I knew people who had played with people at record labels, so I got all the information I could from them. And then when it came time to make my first record, um, I made the conscious decision to spend a great deal of money to make the quality of record that I heard coming out of these record labels and coming off of the radio. I wanted to be included with those people, and I figured that the way that I could do that was to show up in the right vehicle, if you will. So um, what I learned from actually doing that, and I've done it ever since, is you really teach people who you are and what you are, and then they will believe you. I don't. You can use that. You can abuse that power for sure, but that's really how it goes. There's not, just like any other business, and this is a business. Once you make it your career, um, it, you're not asking for permission.
Hmm.
The stage is there for the person that goes to take it, and if you're not ready, um, it's going to go to someone else. There will be moments of opportunity, and I guess that's kind of what you're asking. There were certain moments, but they were well into my career that they happened. For instance, I got asked to play Austin City Limits, which is, for those that don't know, a television show on PBS that's been running for decades now. And
Hmm.
it's a music show. You get to perform a concert on TV. And I couldn't believe that I was asked because I really wasn't established at that point. I had gotten some endorsements from certain artists that carried a lot of weight. Lyle Lovett being one, Ray Benson and Asleep at the Wheel being another. And my star was rising in Austin, Texas. I was on the cover of certain sections in the newspapers. Um, but because I was going around to uh, these outlets, I was going to the actual office of the newspapers and dropping off packets with information about myself and CDs and one sheets. And I
Nice.
going and shaking hands with people and seeing, it was my job. I was working.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so when Austin City Limits happened, I had two records in place already that were self released. And um, I knew a lot of people. I had established enough of a following in Austin that by the time I could get on TV, it could catch, and people started buying the record, and there was a buzz happening. So that was really a boon. It was a boost to my career. I After Austin City Limits, I was able to tour uh, the rest of the country, and just I was touring all over the United States. After that, people were coming to my gigs in certain cities and saying, "We drove 4 hours because we saw you on Austin City Limits," or "We flew
Wow.
from Florida because we saw you on Austin City Limits, and you haven't come to play Florida yet."
Wow.
So that was a really big deal.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like that kind of gave you a more national appeal, because yeah, Austin City Limits is a tastemaker show, so a lot of people are watching it, and yeah, so I think that does sound like that was a pivotal point, but also like you said, you were just gigging nonstop and employing your uncle's advice and networking, and I think with enough of that combined with your talent, it was inevitable.
Maybe so, I mean, in this business, you're always walking a fine line, um, and it's always with your ego that you're walking that fine line. It's easy to become cynical in business because you have an agenda, and your agenda is to advance yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and that doesn't serve people. There's no higher purpose to that. So it's really tricky to always keep yourself in check, and make sure that um, actually your ultimate agenda is to allow for the art, allow for the inspiration that's coming through you. You can't be like a fame chaser, because inevitably in this business you really get burned, and it's always deflating
Hmm.
at some point. Um, but I mean, I don't need to tell anyone that. If you're in this business, you learn that on your own.
Yeah, yeah. I studied music in college also, and I remember a speaker coming in and saying, "If you want to be rich or famous, don't be a musician because there are especially nowadays with social media and everything, there are way easier ways of being famous or rich than being a musician." So, so yeah, do the music for the music, because there's easier ways to get those other things. So you're doing all you start touring nationally after Austin City Limits, and you're getting this enthusiastic fan base coming out to some of your shows, and then you start, your music starts charting on Billboard's jazz charts, and you're getting noticed by NPR or the New York Times, and one of your songs appears in a Woody Allen film, Cafe Society. So that was all awesome, and
Actually, I appeared in the Woody Allen.
you yourself also appeared in the
Yeah,
in person, so you're now officially an actress as well. You now have an IMDb page, probably.
I do, and in fact, upon uh, acting in that film, I realized I didn't want to wait anymore, because it's always been another dream of mine to act.
Hmm.
And I figured, like, well, once my music career is established, it will just be obvious to people that I should be acting too, and then I'll start acting. Um, but I was just playing a singer in this movie, and it didn't seem obvious to anyone that I was an actress. So I thought, I'm gonna have to speed this process up. So I went and I enrolled in acting school in New York,
Mm,
and I feel I can call myself an actress.
there
I've
you go.
studied for 2 years now, and
Uh-huh.
um, or longer, I guess, and I just love it.
Can we expect you in anything, or anything coming up? Are you working on anything? Are you hoping to be working on anything in the acting realm, maybe in 2021 or anything like that?
I don't have anything to report right now, but I'll certainly let you know. I'll tell the whole world.
Well, we won't hold it against you because you've been busy doing other things. Your new album, Dreamers Do, it just came out this year. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Because I love the idea of this album. You know, you're combining mid-century Disney songs, you know, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, Mary Poppins, etc., with familiar, um, you know, classics like What a Wonderful World and Singing in the Rain. And so I was listening to it, and it's fun because you recognize it, but then it sounds new because there's this combination going on. And then, of course, you're singing it in your jazz centric style. So that adds another layer to it. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I first wrote Too Late to Dream, and it asks the question, is there a point in our life when it's actually too late? I was feeling disheartened and really brokenhearted that there were certain things, expectations that I had that hadn't been met, and and I felt like because of that I had failed somehow, and maybe my time was up. Um, After telling you this grand story of all my enthusiastic pursuit,
Hmm.
um, I got really down, and so I wrote this song, um, because it was pouring out of me. I was feeling sad, and I needed to write. And then I found that I was really asking, is it too late to dream? And I was simultaneously looking for an answer and also looking for comfort. And so I went back to all of this music of my childhood
Hmm.
where I got the initial encouragement to dream the way that I had for so long. Um, you know, one of the songs from Cinderella says, "Have faith in your dreams, and someday your rainbow will come smiling through. And when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true," from
Hmm.
Pinocchio.
Yep.
All these things, and I thought,
Hmm.
boy, I never second guessed those messages, and I wondered now, are they really true?
Hmm.
And and the answer that I found through working out all of this material and spending so much time with it, which was really healing for me, was that the only place that I had messed up, the only place I really had to be cautious about was I had married my own expectations to my dreams, and I had lost sight of the fact that it wasn't my place to do such a thing. It was good for me in the beginning to just follow the dream. When we're children, we don't have an agenda about why we're dreaming or why we're playing. We just do it for the sake of doing it.
Hmm.
And then all of sorts of wonderful things unfold. We have no expectations. But when we're adults, we attach fame or fortune or certain goals, and if we don't get them, we feel like, and then we assume that we're failures, we feel despair or something. And that's really all self-imposed. So I remembered that I could just dream and play and see what happens, and I could drop all of those expectations, and it was just it's such a necessary thing for me to go through. It was so great.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, because you told us where all your inspirations came from at the beginning of this interview, and so it's great to hear that you were able to get back and draw from that inspiration well again to kind of come full circle. So you also you got a couple other things going on as well because you just dropped a new single in August called "Where I Am," and you also have been doing the Kat Edmonson show, which you've been streaming. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, "Where I Am" is a song that I wrote when I was on tour last year or this year. Oh God, it feels like a lifetime ago
Right.
now through
Hmm.
everything. But my band and I were actually on tour promoting Dreamers Do Um, we had a 40 city tour, uh, and we'd gotten halfway through when it was cut off and we had to go home and quarantine. But in the midst of that tour, before any of the talk of the pandemic started, I was playing in Austin, and um, Jim Eno from the band Spoon reached
Mm,
out to me. He does work on this uh, s- project. It's an NPR podcast called Song Confessionals. And it's this really cool um, podcast where they record uh, people making confessions, if you will, confiding things that they haven't ever told other people.
mm,
And then they play it back for a musician, and then that musician will write a song and just like in one block of time and record it. So it's a very quick turnaround. And Jim said, we have this confession that we would like to share with you, and we think uh, it would be really cool if you could write something about this. It came right at the time when I was on the road. So um, I was like writing, in my hotel room and stuff in between traveling and gigs, um, and writing on the airplane to Austin. But I heard this confession from this woman that was so shocking. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to tell you anything about it, but it was I could never have anticipated what she was talking about. It's a heart wrenching story that she tells, and that made it also very difficult to write on the road because I was in this happy place,
yeah.
and and there I was, like, in between, just hunched over my little table crying, trying to write
Mm,
this song. But I went in and recorded this, and then ultimately the confessor got like a vinyl. I'm making a record with my hand.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
A vinyl copy of the song, and then the podcast was released, and thus the single was released. So that's the story of where I am.
Very
Uh,
cool.
the Kat Edmonson show. I started 3 weeks into the pandemic. I came home and I was just kind of stunned, as the rest of the world was, like, what? We have to stay inside. We can't go outside. At the time, I was living in New York City. I've since moved actually to upstate New York
Mm,
uh, because of the pandemic. But I never wanted to do a live stream from my house. I really wasn't open to the idea, but I wanted to continue promoting Dreamers Do, and I felt like the record deserved it.
sure.
So 3 weeks in, um, I turned on the camera and started singing for my audience, and now it's grown tremendously. And the technology is actually uh, far better than what I started with. And so I'm performing on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simultaneously every Sunday night from my website, cat.live. And it's my version of a modern day variety show.
Nice.
I have guests, I take requests, I sing my own songs, and I love to just chat with people. We talk about all kinds of things on the show.
Very cool. All right. Well, those both sound very cool. I'm a huge fan of Spoon, but I haven't seen that show, so I'll have to check out that confessional show.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and for those who haven't heard it, check out Where I Am, which is Kat's rendition of someone's confession that she wrote on the road.
Yeah, you can get to it from cat.live. You can access the podcast.
Perfect. Okay, cat.live. You can check that out. Kat, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. What an awesome story, and inspiring. And speaking of inspiration, we like to end the show by asking if you had one piece of advice for aspiring artists, what would it be?
Trust yourself. implicitly. That, like, I mentioned it before, but there's a little voice inside of you that it sounds just like, like a little kid saying, like, I want some ice cream, I want some ice cream. But, like, pay attention to it. That whatever that thing is, like, I want to sculpt with my hands. I want to paint that weird image that I see on the sidewalk. I want to, whatever it is, trust yourself. It will lead you to a place beyond anything you could have ever anticipated, and it's far better than any plans you have for yourself.
I do really like the way you described that sometimes it's not fantasy or wishful thinking, that maybe your intuition telling you something. That's your
Yeah.
direction.
Bringing it backward.